Jose Trujillo, I'm a fine art artist. I'm coming to you from my art studio to talk to people who want to commission a portrait painting. I'm tackling portrait painting. I used to do portrait paintings. I'm still a portrait painter. I used to do portrait paintings. A lot of my early work and the way I started selling my work was through portrait art. I used to do abstract. I used to do classic portraits. I love doing portrait paintings. I learned the process. I learned the procedures. I learned the pricing. I learned the whole thing about it. And I want to talk to you who want to commission. And if you're an artist and you're listening to this, you might want to take some notes. I don't know. It might help you. Who knows? So these are my pricing. Okay. In portrait painting, it's called fees. It's not called pricing. I mentioned in other videos. It's just a little bit more elegant. So when you refer to portraits, you might hear, or when someone refers to portraits, the painter you might hear this from the painter. He'll say or she'll say, the fee for this, for a cameo, check out my other videos. The fee for a bust is X amount. So the question might be, as the question of many people is, what is the right pricing? What is the right fee? How much? to put it more simple, how much is a portrait painting? Well, it varies. It's just like everything good. It varies. There's no single answer. Go check out my other video on why it varies. Because when a portrait painting, you're gonna have different formats. For example, you have the cameo, you have the bust, you have the half body or 3/4, and then you have the full figure. A full painting of you. And if it's a family or a couple, you have a second figure or third figure, and that just adds. Portrait painting, good portrait painting, especially that classic portrait painting, just because it's been more I guess accepted in the market as the way to create portraits. I'm not bashing anyone. There's different types of portraits, and of course, you have portrait artists from Chuck Close, and one of the marvels of our century, and you have Lucien Freud, another great portrait painter, and then you have portrait painters who are like the classic ones, like John Singer Sargent, or Francisco Goya. You have portrait painters so. Portrait painting goes in different styles. You have Picasso too doing portraits, or Modigliani. You have different styles. You have Renoir. The impressionist type of painting. Make sure that you go for someone who you like the style, how you want to be represented. I mentioned in other videos, if you want a classic portrait painting of yourself, please don't go to an abstract painter. Don't go to a cubist painter, because that is not a classic painting. And vice versa. If you want an abstract, don't go to someone who's very delicate, that paints maybe like Courbet. They make this very classic portraits. You might not want that. Who knows? So when it comes to prices, I'm juggling here. When it comes to prices, portrait painting, it is not cheap. Good portrait painting, it's not inexpensive. It's not going to be cheap. Okay, it costs. There's a high cost for it, and depends on what high is. But it's one of the most beautiful things you could have done. I think it's kind of leaving a legacy. It's for generations and generations of family are going to like in the movies, like in the cartoons. You see those portraits of the couple. It's a beautiful thing to have. So when it comes to fees, I'm going to give you a ballpark, and this, of course, change, okay? And of course, it changes when you're talking about an artist who is a famous artist or has a high reputation in the industry. I'm going to call it industry. So, my advice to you, if you want to cut costs somewhere, go with someone who's really good, but it's not really famous. Okay, that's like the holy grail. Okay, when it comes to price and value. Go with someone who's really great at painting, that you're like, oh my God, that's fantastic. I love this painter, but it's not very famous. Why? Because fame in art seems to control price, especially nowadays. Fame controls price. It's just the way it is. Okay, don't get upset about it or anything. It's just like Leonardo DiCaprio is going to charge more for a painting than than, I don't know, Stamos. And don't feel bad, John Stamos, if you're watching this, if you ever watch this. But it's just the way it is, okay? I'm going to give you a ballpark. Usually, this is for someone who's not famous, okay? Who's someone who doesn't have a big name in the area, industry. Usually, a cameo will run for about $2,000. And before some of you scream and shout and say you're wrong, you're crazy, I'm basing it out of when I used to paint, and this is a few years back, okay? Not so many, but when I used to do portraits, this was kind of like the standard pricing, a ballpark. I don't know, it might be 2, 4, whatever, but a ballpark, $2,000 for a cameo. It's about $3,000 to $4,000 for a bust, okay? And for a half body or half figure, it run about $5,000, somewhere around there. Someone who's not famous, but is very good at what they're doing. And a full body, it could go from $7,000 to $10,000. Someone who is proficient, at what they're doing. And I'm not talking about realism, or they're just good at their craft. This could be any style, whether it's impressionistic or cubist or whatever. Someone who's proficient and hasn't acquired that name, that fame, that recognition, the reputation. That's about the ballpark. Don't quote me on the prices. I know they've changed, but that's just kind of what you're expecting with a portrait painting. And that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Jose Trujillo. I'm a fine art artist.